And I'm going to be posting this up on YouTube as well as Facebook and everything. So let's hope I don't really screw it up. So first of all, my name is MJ Spigot. You also might know me as Marguerite Davis, or if you're online, I also go under the synonym Jitara. I've been writing for 20 years. I could say I've been writing for 30-some years, but my first published book was back in 2004. So what got me into writing is actually fan fiction. I don't know how many of you who might read fan fiction, write fan, so you know how it can really take effect on your life. It really holds you. And a lot of people, the reason they write fan fiction is because they want to see something in a series, a book series, comic, movie, TV series, but it's never going to show. So you write what you want to see. And a good share of the time you're writing for yourself. And then if you really like it, you want to share it. And so that's pretty much how I got started. I got started at the age of 10 with Little Shop of Horrors, of all things. And so I started writing that. And then I got into Transformers. And I wrote that for quite a few years. Moved on to stuff like Captain Sakura. And then, I don't know if you know Rise of the Guardians. It was animated movie back in 2012. I watched it with my son, became addicted with it, so I started writing some stories. And then How to Train Your Dragon. But before those later ones, I started with my own book series. And I write a lot of fantasy. So I wanted to do modern day fantasy. And that's how I started with the Ravens and Realm series. I have a fascination with reincarnation. You know, I've always believed in it. It's something that my family's believed in. And we talk about it quite often. So I wanted to, well, I was kind of inspired to write about what happens if the soul splits in two, you know. And in this case, it began with one person having a car accident and pretty much dying, and then his soul being split in half and reincarnated, and then he was resuscitated, so part of it came back. So that's pretty much where I started with Raven's Realm, but I'll get more into that after. I should actually talk about the newest book series and work backwards. So the newest book series is Gods Among Dragons. So this is, if you've seen How to Train Your Dragon, Game of Thrones, Dungeons and Dragons, everybody knows that from 70s, 80s, and now. That's pretty much where I began working with that. I love dragons. I was born the year of the dragon. So dragons have always, again, been part of my life. I make them. And so I wanted to do a book, and I wanted something younger, something my son could read, because he's only 11 now. When I started, he was about 6, 5 or 6, and it started off as a fan fiction, and it was posted online. So I never expected to make it into a novel series. I got approached by a publisher who read it. She was a fan of mine, absolutely loved it, asked me if I would do 1,001 rewrites, change all the characters, scrap about half of what I did, and redo it. And then she picked two other stories that were part of that series, and got me to do the same thing. So the first book is Brothers, and this is about Eric Redhairs, and he was abandoned at birth because he was born deformed, and he ended up being saved and adopted. He ends up learning that one of his best friends is actually his brother, who had been the one to save him and give him to another family. Throughout that, though, we discover that he has special gifts. You know, magic runs in a lot. It's a huge theme in a lot of my books. So we discover he has magic, and there's a warlord that wants his gifts. And that progresses into the second book, Victory, which continues on. It takes place a few months, maybe a year later, where the warlord actually does manage to capture him, and how him and his dragon, Kalima, managed to survive it and discover more about his origins. Throughout it all, it's kind of like an origin story. In Beyond Valhalla, it takes place again about a year or two after victory there, where Eric is now a grown man, and he's the chief of his tribe. And then we have his father kind of comes back from the dead. And it's as you can imagine, there could be a lot of chaos with that. Because in Viking times, there was a huge belief in, I guess, their version of a zombie type thing, where a person who was believed to have died coming back is cursed. And so it's an interesting twist on that, as well as Eric finding his true power and finally finding who he is. So it kind of wraps up the whole trying to discover yourself. So from there, this was just finished this year. So this is the last 3-4 years worth of novels. I also did this cute little one, the young reader's book, that I did for my son and his friends. And as I mentioned before, it's an alternate universe setup where you have dragons in the here and now in Sudbury at Science North. And they're pretty much part of everyday life for us. So you have little wee tiny dragons that can hide in a pocket watch. Then you have great big ones that like to sleep on top of buildings. So it's a cute little story about these kids getting together and trying to rescue a dragon that they think is being mistreated at Science North. And discovering that, no, they're the ones in the wrong, and now they're in a lot of trouble. So now we can go back over to, I guess, Raven's Realm. And I feel kind of bad. I have all these notes. I'm not even looking at them. So I'm kind of bouncing around instead of staying on topic. So, okay. I mentioned before I'm really into reincarnation. Reincarnation, almost every culture has a belief in reincarnation in one form or another. You know, you have the Hindus who believe you come back as a creature sometimes, and you level up depending on your good deeds, or you level down depending on your bad deeds. My big thing with reincarnation is it's just a fascinating topic. I mean, you have your former life, you know, how that affects your life now. So, I say I'm a lot. Okay, so pretty much the premise of the story is Anthony St. Clair is a powerful magician who existed from the 1930s until the 1950s, when he passed away. And he became extremely powerful in that time. He had a lot of enemies, and he ended up dying due to, actually they classify it as mysterious causes, and I'm not going to give you the reason why, because that would kind of destroy both the latter half of the books. So, anyways, he passed away, and when he was reincarnated into a man named Daniel. Daniel had a twin, and his twin ended up dying, but his twin had a son. Daniel ended up getting into a car accident in his mid to late 20s, and he ended up dying on an operating table. His soul split in half, and one half ended up being reborn into later on to be his nephew. Unfortunately, due to circumstances, they never met until many years later. And that's where things begin with Eli. So the story's not so much about Daniel, but it's about Eli finding Daniel, finding out who he is, finding out why, he is the way he is. He never understood why he's attracted to North America or why he gets pulled in certain directions, because he's in England. So, it's a lot. He has a lot of questions, but he also goes through a lot of trauma. His parents end up dying when he's a young man. He grows up with his grandparents. The grandmother ends up passing away. And all these different traumatic events start pulling from his past life, not from Daniel, but from Anthony. So Anthony starts taking control and becoming a prominent part of him. And I know I'm probably not making much sense because I'm not very good at explaining things, but the entire series is pretty much Eli learning to deal with Anthony and learning to accept that part of him is also Daniel. Because two souls put back together, and there's a lot of rivalry because Anthony, known as the most powerful magician of his time, his power transferred to Eli, and Eli is now the most powerful magician of his time. And so everybody wants a piece of that power. Everybody wants a piece of him. You destroy the most powerful magician, suddenly you're the most powerful magician because it takes one to destroy one. So we end up having a lot of fairies in it because I deal with different realms. His guardians happen to be fairy. From the Ancili courts, the dark fairies. His guardians are dark fairies. Daniel's guardians are light fairies. And you move through the series as Eli grows older. I believe he's 12 in book 1, and by the end he's 19, 20. And so we have demons in it. We have warlocks. We have your fairies. We have some angels or archangels. We have psychic vampires. And they all play different roles. So there's a total of 6 books in this series. Right now, only 5 are published. We found a missing manuscript that I wrote maybe 12, 13 years ago and misplaced because I ended up, life got in the way. I became a mom, which, it's one of the greatest things in the world, but it made me very forgetful about different things I wrote. The series is 6 in total, and it landed into having a spin-off. So the spin-off became The Women of Ravenwood. So that would be from the series here. Feel free to come look at the books after if you like. The spin-off, I went from writing third person, which is why I'm most comfortable with, because I love writing about bad guys. I love getting into the bad guys' mindset, why they're the way they are, why they're after this person, stuff like that. And I moved over to first person. So now I'm the antagonist. Okay, when I write, I'm writing from my perspective, or as that character. And the first 2 books follow Selena Hawk, who is Eli's guardian. Eli is now 21. He's a grown man. And Selena is kind of feeling useless. She's been a guardian all her life, and now she's trying to make a life for herself. So she's joined the police force, of all things. And there's a department that is dedicated to the paranormal. So she's joined the Paranormal Detective Division. And so she's trying to have a normal life, as normal as a fairy could, in a big city. And the big cities and fairies don't work very well. And anyhow, on top of it, she now has problems back home. Not home with Eli, but home in the Ancili court. And she has to go up against the queen, and she ends up having a lot of issues she has to deal with and new responsibilities that kind of fall on her lap. The series is ongoing. There's 2 books presently. We have another one coming out probably early next year, which is the 3rd in the series. And then there's a 4th one based on Jatara, who is a character I've been working with now for about 30 years. My very first original character, and she'll probably be with me right to the end. She's gone through a lot of transitions, been through a lot of fanfic up to original books. And so, yeah, if you type in the name, you'll probably find a dozen or one different stories about her or links about her. She's been from Transformers, she's been through Card Captors, she's been through, oh my God, hundreds and hundreds of stories. And she's never actually had her own story. So she's finally getting one after all these years. Let me see. What else? So that's about the books. So I'm going to actually talk a bit about writing and how fandom, television, books, music, all kinds of things can inspire you. I mean, you walk down the road, you see some crazy thing happen, and you write about it. Writing is, as far as I'm concerned, writing is more about you. It's not about writing for everybody else. When I wrote these books, I never imagined publishing. I never even thought about it. I was more than happy to just kind of put it out there and see who liked it. And if they did, they did. If they didn't, they didn't. And I probably never would have published if I didn't have friends who end up loving the books and saying, try it, submit. The thing with submitting to a publisher is it's very nerve-wracking. Okay, I've submitted my books to about 20, 30 different publishers over the years. And honestly, I've got more rejection letters than I can paper a wall with. And it's heartbreaking. It's very heartbreaking when you have that happen because you don't know what you did wrong. And some good share of the time, they don't tell you. You have to find that one publisher, that one editor, that one person that has the sudden spark of hope and tells you, this is how you fix it. And luckily for me, after about 3 years of submitting and one attempt at self-publishing, I had a publisher say, how about trying to do it a little bit more grown up? So at this point, this series here had been self-published. And I was looking for a new publisher for this because I gave up trying to find a publisher for them. And so she looked at my stories and she said, why don't you add, and here comes the big S word, add sex to it. Well, at that time I was kind of like, oh, well, okay, but that's not what I want. And she's like, it doesn't matter what you want anymore. You sent it to me, you want it published, this is what we want. I kind of like, I don't know. I was about to turn it away. And then she pulled out the checkbook and told me how much she was going to pay me. And I said, okay, let's add some sex to this. So I did a complete rewrite and added some sex scenes to it. So she ended up buying these 2 books. And then she took a look at those ones and she said, okay, now you might get a little offended because these 2 became erotica, but let's add just a little hint of it into those. Okay, fine. So all of a sudden, from going from no books being published, I had 7 books in a matter of 2-3 years after we went through all the editing. I had her she was my first publisher. I had her for about 5-6 years. And she was a great publisher. Out of BC, she was Canadian, but she wanted everything written American. So if you know how the spelling changes between Canada and the US, it's you add a letter here, you take away a letter there, almost the same, but not the same. So about 3 years ago, I got approached by another publisher. I was in the middle, that's the one who actually found these ones when they were fan fiction. And she said, okay, you can change this. No, we do not want sex. That's the first thing I said. No, the first thing they said to me is, no, we do not want to add sex to it. I said, oh, perfect. It's like, great, I can keep that, PG-13 rating. I love the violence. Well, but anyways, so she went through, we got all this done, and then she's looking back at the other books and like, what's your publisher doing for you? How much are you getting paid? At that time, I wasn't making enough money. They were just ebooks. Ebooks are great. You can put them on your phone. You can take them anywhere. But they're not the same as the actual book. You look at these and they're so pretty. You can look through them, flip through them, whatnot. Ebooks, you can't really flip through it as well. So next thing I knew, a new publisher, not only got those 3, she bought out my contract for all of the rest. And now my publisher's here in Sudbury, Casey Editions, owned by Kristen Cannon, a very amazing woman. We're not a big publishing company by any means, but we're Northern Ontario. So when I come out now, I can talk about my books. I can talk about this great publisher who's here, who's local. It's keeping everything nice and close. And that's pretty much how I got into publishing here. Now, how many of you write? You both write? Do you write your own stories? Or?
Yep.
Yeah?
I just finished my first novel.
Oh, awesome. When you're all ready, maybe you should get a hold of Kristen.
Maybe. I'm ready now, actually. I just did PitMag yesterday, had a publisher interested.
Oh,
So
awesome.
I don't know what to do with it now. So.
Oh, well, I'll give you Kristen's contact info later on.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So, then you know how technology affects things now. When I started writing, I had big binders, and I used to throw them in my backpack, travel everywhere with them, and I'd get bored, I'd pull it out, I'd start writing. Everything was handwritten. This is going back 20, 30 years. Okay. Then, we started getting these nice little notebooks in Dollarama. God, I love Dollarama. Okay. I'm there all the time. I started buying little notebooks in Dollarama and then throwing them in my purse. Still going old school, but it was helpful. I didn't get my first laptop until 2005, 2006. Before then, I had this great big bulky computer that was on the corner of my desk, and that's why I typed on. But because I was always traveling, I always had my notebooks and my binders. Then when I got my first laptop, that thing was almost as heavy as my bloody computer. Honest to God, you could not take that thing anywhere. I don't know what they meant about portable unless you had a suitcase. But anyhow, but that's how I started off. And all these ones over here were done with great big binders. These two finally moved to my notebooks. These guys are purely digital. Can never say that before, but they're purely digital. And in fact, they were done on my smartphone. So I love technology. I love smartphones. I don't think I can actually live without my smartphone now, which is pretty sad. My son says I'm obsessed. I honestly believe it's the greatest thing they came out with, because of the fact that you have all your word programs. You have all your editing. People love Grammarly. I think it's the big popular one now. But yeah, you just kind of stick it in your back pocket, go, and you want to type, just start typing. A lot of people think I'm rude. I'm going to be honest here. People think I'm one of the rudest people you'll ever meet. And not because I say rude things, but because I have a tendency, when I get into a story, I can't stop. So back in the day when I had my binders, I would be out, and honest to God, I went to a wedding, and I got in trouble because I had brought my backpack. And people would look at me like, why did you bring your backpack? And I say, well, just in case. And no word of a lie, we had the reception. Everybody was eating dinner, and all of a sudden, this stupid idea hit me, and out came my binder. Everything pushed out of the way. Out came my binder, it went there, and I started writing. My sister's, her second son's baby shower. I had moved from binders to notebooks. And again, out came my notebook. In the middle, everybody's talking, joking, doing all those baby shower games. And I'm just there, sitting there with my knees up like this, holding my notebook, writing away. I was lost in my own world. I'm just like that with my phone now. My son is always on my case of, Mom, this is a baseball game. Mom, we are in a school play. Mom, put the phone away. You can type about it later. Honestly, I can never type later. If an idea hits, I just write. And I write and write. I could write for hours on end. The only place where I can't write because my boss will literally fire me is at work. But I try. Breaks are great. So, as I was saying, with almost every book in the last 5 years has been written on my smartphone. And I have hundreds of ideas all the time, dozens of fan fictions. I think the last count was 102 fan fictions online, and they're about novel's length. And then I have about 20 more books that are in the works right now. We're trying to have them one every 2 years, just to kind of pace it a little bit. But the way I'm going, I'll probably have enough to do me until I'm 100 and something. I don't know. My son would be happy. He can take them and he keep publishing for me. When I'm gone, he can keep it up, and my grandchildren can keep it up. But yes, technology is a huge thing now, and I honestly say to embrace it. I used to be against technology. I was one of these people, if it wasn't a pen and paper, then I wasn't interested. Now you can't tear me away from my phone. It's here, it's recording, and but yeah. So let's see. As you notice, I have some of my creations with me. My writing kind of inspires me to draw, to create. I love creating stuff. I love cosplay. I don't get to participate as much as I would love, but my books have inspired me to do cosplay for the first time since I was a huge Transformer fan. And back then, you'd see me running around in these great big cardboard costumes of one robot or another. But now I build dragon plushies and dragon backpacks, great big ones. I have this guy here. This guy is actually featured throughout the books, much larger. Not this small, but much larger. I have artwork all over my walls at home. My bedroom does not have an actual painting from any known artist or something you can buy in the store. Everything is based on my characters. I have, oh my lord, I have so much stuff. Bookshelves. I was a huge book collector until I ran out of space for my own books. And then of my writing, and so now I have bookshelves for my stuff and a pile of books kind of off to the side of books that I'm reading and then donate, or the ones I really love I keep. I used to have a collection of over 1,000 books. I had my own library at one time. I just don't have the room anymore. So let's see. So the other thing with being an author, whether you're published or not, okay, or if you're waiting to be published, social media is your main goal, okay? Get out there. Get your own Facebook page, not just your social page. I'm sure you have a page to promote your books.
All on Twitter.
All on Twitter? I have Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, YouTube, Instagram. You guys might laugh, but I still have MySpace. I don't update it very much, but I still have MySpace. I also have DeviantArt and Pinterest. These are all social networks that you can use. You got a cover for your book, post it. Post it everywhere. Just splatter it with links to your website, links to your Facebook page, links to your Twitter page. Whatever is your whatever social media you use the most, that's what you want to link, okay? Link it to everything, because then people will go, they get curious, they go check it out. They might not find anything they're interested in. Like that day you might be talking about, crappy weather or whatever, but it gets people interested. They look, they see, they know that you're a human. You're not just some bot that's like plastered everything all over the place. You probably see that a lot with Twitter. You'll get a bunch of followers that are just bots. It happens on Tumblr all the time. But yeah, if every time you do something new, if you're traveling, doing a convention like this, trying to promote your books, take pictures, post them on everywhere you can, link them back to your main page, because people will look. People get curious. The more interesting the picture, the better. The more interesting the story, the better. Like this video is going to go up on YouTube soon, and maybe people watch it, maybe people won't, but those who are curious will link back to my Facebook page. Actually, I should probably switch over to Twitter since I have a huge following there compared to Facebook. But yeah, you need these things now. Back 20 years ago, back 10 years ago, nobody really cared about social media. Now it's huge. Everybody's in. My big issue is marketing. I am horrible at marketing. That's why I do panels when I can, because it's the only time I can actually talk and nobody really gives me that funny look, because I'm supposed to be weird and crazy and, that's what I'm supposed to be today. Any other day, I have to be kind of prim and proper or, pretend. So I guess what I'm saying is an online presence is necessary these days. If you're good at blogging, blog. If you hate blogging but like to video blog, video blog. Whichever you're most comfortable with, just make that presence. Get yourself known. Preferably in a good way, So, anyways, my upcoming projects, like I was mentioning, I do have one more book in the Ravens Realm series. I have a continuing series going here for the Women of Ravenwood. We are moving to audiobooks. Like right now, we have ebooks, softcover, hardcover. Usually I have my hardcover here for display, but I left them all at home, so I had to snag all my soft covers from my table. Audiobooks are amazing. So if you can find somebody who can do it, just, go for it. It's expensive though. I have a local talent who did mine for $50 because it was her first time doing it. And she must have did it over and over about 4 times now before she was satisfied. So, $50 and a year's worth of taping, that's not bad. But most of the time, you're looking at anywhere from $200 to $5,000 or more, depending on the size of the book, depending on the context, and depending on how well known that person is who's reading. All my books are being done by the same person, except for the Gods Among Dragons. I actually have somebody in California who's doing that one. I do manuscripts. I write for film as well. So right now I am helping a gentleman in California translate a bunch of Japanese Transformer episodes into English and making them sound good, not just, you hear some of those translations and it's very choppy and it doesn't seem to really resonate with you. So I'm the one who has to go in, clean it up, make sure that it flows properly. It sounds American or Canadian. It doesn't sound Japanese and chopped up. And, some people do bad translations. I'm trying to make it nicer. But that being said, I also write my own film scripts. I'm hoping to get into indie film soon. I have a few director friends and film friends who are local, and the only issue I have is because I write fantasy, I have a hard time writing without some sort of magical twist or special effects or, something that needs a blue screen, or somebody who's very good at CGI. But I'm working on it. I like to write horror as well. I'm really into psychological horror. So not like the Saw series, that's just too much. But I've written one manuscript called Raven's Song that we were supposed to start filming back in 2013, but due to budget and everything, we had to kind of pull the plug on it. So we had actors, we had a film crew, we just didn't have the budget. But hopefully in time I can fix that. Let's see. So what else can I talk about here? Anybody have any questions? Would you like to ask anything?
Yeah, I had a few questions in my mind. I had to sort through them.
I was supposed to take pauses to let people ask questions, but sometimes I just talk too much.
Yeah, I guess one of the questions I had in mind is just you've been talking about all these things that you've been doing, and that you have a child at home, and,
yes,
and you have another job, right? So
yeah.
How do you this is my thing too, where how do you balance all that?
Oh my God, it is so hard. My son is 11 now, so he's kind of used to my crazy inopportune moments where I start writing, in between things. Balancing it's a very difficult act. A lot of the time I used to write at night My son, he would go to bed. When he was little, he'd be in bed about 7, 8 o'clock. So I'd write from the time he went to bed to about 2, 3 in the morning. I also take care of my mother, who lives with me. She's disabled, and she has a lot of medical issues. But yeah, usually I write when people sleep, especially when I used to go for the binder or the notebook. Now that I have my smartphone, it's a lot easier. I do write from time to time at work when it's very slow. I work at a feed store, so I work by myself, which is very great. I love that because I can do a few things that I'm not supposed to. And yes, I know this is going on YouTube, so if my boss sees it, I'll apologize later. Yeah. But balancing is more about finding your own center and your own balance inside yourself than finding time. Because time's irrelevant. You know, if you wake up early in the morning, there's a challenge on Twitter. You wake up 5 in the morning, write to about 7, and when you wake up your children, get them ready for school, get them to school, and then if you have a bit of time before work, write some more, and then, just whenever you get to. That's why I always encourage either a notebook, smartphone, anything. Pen and paper is your best friend, even if I don't do it very often anymore. It's the best way to do it. Because if you go to Tim Hortons for coffee, you can sit down and just write, even if it's a paragraph, you just kind of fit it in wherever you can. It can be difficult. As a single mom, and taking care of my mom, it's a very difficult balancing act, but you can do it. I don't think I would have gone as far as I have if it wasn't for them actually supporting me as well. Like my son, he's my biggest support. These 4 were written after he was born. These 2 were written just before he was born, and all that was a long time ago. It's a long time now. 20 years writing, so 15 years published. But it's just a balancing act. You fit it in when you can. Any other questions? No?
I still have some.
Oh, go right ahead.
I was just wondering if.
Oh, it's okay.
So for when you were describing your books, so you're saying that there's reincarnation in it, that there's dragons, that there's fairies, etc.
Yes.
So because those creatures can be so common in other fantasy, do you feel like it's important to have your own spin on it, or you're the type of person who you like the original idea, so you just playing with them as characters but making the story unique, or do you try to put traits in themselves?
Oh yes.
To really switch it up.
Oh, you definitely have to put your own spin on stuff. One of the things that when I was working with reincarnation, I haven't read very many books about reincarnation at that time. Most of the books I read were textbooks. So it was really interesting to do. Around that time, there was a TV series or a cartoon series. It was actually from Japan, called Kurikapta Sakura. And they dealt with reincarnation. A powerful magician who apparently, according to the comic books, he was able to split his soul in 2 and do different characters.